Amen.
How did you do it in the beginning?
Okay.
And once you can let us know that, I believe God will open our eyes. Okay. So, as I said, in the beginning, and obviously the issue of finance, that's a challenge. Like, whatever strategy.
Brilliant.
That whatever strategy, how did you spend money, or whatever you did, but in the beginning.
Very good.
Thank you.
Let me tell you this. In the beginning, I was trained as a journalist. Read journalism, finished first degree upper, with distinction. Best in my class, in my university for the last 22 years. Studied really good, But when I began to preach, nobody would listen. I was the best in the university. I had 15,000 students. And here I came out of university talking to regular people now. They would not come. And God told me I was going to build a mega church and nobody was coming. That was a challenge. So, I knew I was in trouble. Because I was giving out leaflets and handbills and inviting people to come to church regularly, like I will hear people do. But people here don't respond to that. So that was when God spoke to me, when I saw Pastor Natasha. You've read my books, and I wept. I was crying that you brought alcoholics to me and all that. Then that was when God spoke to me about going to the down and out. So I took that Pastor Natasha, and we began to go. She told me that there are spots where drunkards and alcoholics used to gather. And alcoholics and drug addicts. And there were special hospitals too where they keep these kind of people. I never knew. I was living in the country for 8 years at that point. I never even knew that there were alcoholics in the country. Because I was in the student campus. So anyway, so this was my first real test. I had to remove my suit, my tie, all my messages and my revelations, and I had to put them down. And I was thinking, if I could only have miracles and I could preach very, very well, it was good. But I prayed and fasted for 3 months, but nobody to do miracle on. I will not do it on shares. So God said, go and touch people with the love of God. So we began to go to preach to these people. Of course, initially, these people were getting, these street people, they were getting healed and delivered, but they were not coming to church. So I was working at this point as a journalist at the television station, working as a journalist there, and also using my money to just rent a classroom in the university. So from my salary. So that was good for the classroom, not for the audience. I didn't have enough money to buy a guitar even. I didn't even have enough money to buy a drum. So I had to leave my apartment where I was renting, because it was expensive, to go to the dormitory. Because I knew a student from Africa, from Ghana, in the dormitory, because they were taking $5 only for the dormitory, and for the house it was $300. So I needed to reduce my expenses. So I moved to his room in the dormitory. So that I could use the money to rent the room. So that was how I got by in the beginning, and then to eat and keep myself going and invite some people. So it was difficult. So, and then I also made an announcement on the TV, because I was working on TV. I was an anchor. I was a anchor or whatever, anchor man on the TV. So I used that opportunity to invite people. So I had the first 7 people in my apartment, in my house. So we were using my apartment. What are the things I began to teach them? I started teaching them about the fact that there is God. I started teaching from Jeremiah, is it 11, 15? I have a purpose for 29, 11 to 13. Yeah, Jeremiah 29 verses 11 to 13. I have a future for you. He said, I know the plan that I have for you. It's plan for good and not for evil and all that. So I started. These were communists. These were white people who never had the concept of God at all. They were trained from childhood. There was no God. So I began to convince them that there is a God that has a plan for you. That when you were forming your mother's womb, he knew about you. I began to make examples, convince them that they were created for a purpose and things. So I taught that for about 3 months. Teach just to convince them. Then I got statistics. I bought the book of Josh McDowell because I was dealing with atheists, so I needed to get statistics that proved that Jesus was the Son of God, that God existed. I needed to prove to white people thinking from the thinking of physics and Einstein and saying Einstein is Einstein said this and Marx said that. So I needed to get facts to really disprove those things, you see. And I was a good student in the university, so I could use the argument to debunk some of the things they were saying. So most of my teachings was connected to prove that there was God that loves them, that is interested in them, that wants to lift them, that wants to grant them, and I began to pray for them that any problem you have, and I knew that, I had fasted, I prayed, I knew God can do miracles. I began to pray for their problem concretely. I wanted them to taste God, to experience the supernatural. I knew that if they would, just one touch of God is better than all my sermons and all my arguments and all my McDowell and Marx and Lenin. So that began to happen. So I didn't call this church. I called it Bible study group, or people who are curious about the Bible, or questions about the Bible, seminars, or workshops, things like that. So I did this for a few months, maybe for about 6 months. So then they began to call their friends because the alcoholics began to get free, the drug addicts. Then their mothers and their parents began to say, "Oh, what did you do to my son? I don't need to see that black guy." Then they began to join and things like that. Yes, it was in the classroom. So when we started the church, we decided to start the church after 6 months. And then we moved to an auditorium. We had only 49 people after we did crusade. So they've invited all their friends. As a result of the events, we had 49 people. And we needed to work with those people to be established. That was a whole hell of a problem to get people to establish in Europe. It's another headache anyway. Even when they get sick, they get healed from cancer, you see them in the street and they say, "Oh, why do you not come to church?" "Oh, I'm okay. Why do I need I'm okay now. I'm healed. I don't need it now. Do you mean I should come?" "Oh, no, I am busy." Anyway, so those are another problem we need to overcome. So anyway, but then I discovered that if I needed to really grant them and I had to resign from my job. So I resigned from my job. Then that was when I really, I was still living in the dormitory. That's when I really had crisis, major one, because I couldn't pay for first of all, I couldn't pay for 1 month, then 2 months, for up to 6 months. The first 6 months, I couldn't pay for the rent. So I had to be begging the director, trying to convince him of my sincerity. Then something happened. After 1 year, because I was working with drug addicts and alcoholics, they didn't have money. So our monthly offering and tithe and offering altogether was $200 at the end of the month. Less than what I used to receive at my job. Of course. 200, it was like nothing. So this was the time Apostle Tough came after 1 year. So I told him that this is our problem, our challenge. And he began to, so I told him, so he told me, "Tell me how much you would like to make at the end of the month." So I told him I would like to make $1,000 at the end of the year. No, but at the end of the first year, we made $200, each month. So he said, "How much do you want to make at the end of the year?" I said, "At the end of the year, I want to make $1,000. He said, "No, I want you to believe God that you make $1,000 every month." I said, "No, it's not possible because these people don't work." I was explaining to him all kind of things. I said, "Okay, let's pray for 500. He said, "No." He said, I said, "Okay, let's do that 1,000 at the end of the year." He said, "No, 1 month." I said, this man doesn't know. So he sat me down, began to teach me and tell me something, and prayed with me and said, "With spirit of faith." He began to pray for me for spirit of faith and impacted confidence and faith in me. And by the time the month end was come, we were having not that $1,000 but $2,000. That is how we broke that spirit of poverty.